and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 375, and today's date is May 26, 2014, and the title of this episode is Russia and China are now working together to organize the global de-dollarization. And we can see that China has been making deals for many years right now. They've been setting up bilateral trade agreements with many countries across the world. They've been setting up clearinghouses, and we can see Russia and China have both been purchasing a huge amount of gold. And of course, with this Ukraine situation, it has now pushed Russia into overdrive in creating their own payment system, or now working with Visa and Mastercard to bring in the system into their country. So politics can't play a role in this, because Visa and Mastercard realized they will lose a lot of business. Because of these ridiculous sanctions that were placed on individuals, most of the Russian officials have removed their wealth from the Western banking system because they're afraid that there are more sanctions on the way. Banks in Russia were sanctioned, and it wasn't placed on the country itself because that would have a boomerang effect with the EU and the United States, and pretty much the economies of both would come crashing down because they are just held together with glue, tape, and spit, and that's about it. So they are working together, Russia and China, to create a reserve system to protect themselves. They are creating this entire system by making deals with each other, making deals with other countries, and we can see right now Russia has been selling their treasury bonds. We can see they've been reducing the reserves in dollar, and we can see that once China starts to really dump its treasury bonds, many countries are going to follow. Now, the central bankers of the United States government is not going to let that happen. They will create some type of an event, and this is why they are really pushing what's going on in Syria. Ukraine is falling apart. They had their puppet regime elections. They lost most of the country, so they are concentrating right now on Syria, and it seems like they are preparing for some major event. And we understand the elections are going to happen on June 3rd in Syria. So what did they do? Well, they decided to have a military exercise during this time frame from May 25th to June 8th. Is it a coincidence? I don't think so. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe this was completely planned. There are thousands upon thousands of soldiers in this area. They're bringing in more advanced weapons. We see other countries are all joining with this exercise, and this is definitely a push to create some type of an event to go into Syria. We saw the same buildup during the August of 2013 false flag event on Syria. And again, they're using the chlorine chemical attacks, blaming it on Assad, keeping the chemical weapons within the country so they can't get them out. The corporate media is letting us know that Assad has been hiding weapons, biological, chemical, and we can see right now is they put everything into place. They removed the government officials in Syria out of the embassies in the United States. They told them all to leave. They brought in the opposition and said, you are now the liaison, the future government of Syria. The President Obama was out there saying Assad has no future whatsoever in his own country. Again, this is a sovereign nation, and he's out there saying that he has no future whatsoever. So we can see this is a complete buildup. They are preparing some type of an event. We have to understand that the economy is falling apart at this time. If we look at retail right now, every single retail store is having a problem. I would say about 95% of the stores. And we go down the list here. It is just awful. I mean, Walmart profit plunges by $220 million, declines by 1.4%. Target, their profits plunged by $80 million, 16% lower than 2013. Sears loses $358 million in first quarter. I mean, Kmart plunges by 5.1%. JCPenney, same thing. Kohl's, Costco profits declined by $84 million, and sales only increased by 2%. Staples profits plunged by 44% and sales collapse, closing hundreds of stores. Gap income drops 22% as same-store sales fall. American Eagle profits tumbled 86%, and of course we know they're going to close about 150 stores. Aeropostale loses $77 million, and their sales collapsed by 12%. Best Buy sales declined by $300 million. This is awful. Macy's profits are down by 1.4%. Dollar General plummets by 40%. Urban Outfitters earnings collapse by 20%. McDonald's earnings fall by $66 million. Darden profit collapses by 30%. TJ Maxx misses earnings expectations as sales and earnings flat. And Home Depot misses earnings expectations as customers' traffic only rises by 2.2%. This is getting terrible, and when all these stores start to close down, there's going to be a huge amount of empty retail space. These plazas are going to look empty. These malls are going to look empty, and that's going to reduce the amount of traffic going to these areas. This whole scenario is not getting better. It is getting worse. And the United States central bankers, they do realize this. They realize the economy is falling apart, and all their manipulation in unemployment, GDP, inflation, they've changed it many times. They can't keep up with it anymore. They're losing the story at this time. People are no longer believing it because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that the unemployment rate continually drops and sales in stores are dropping. Housing market is imploding. It doesn't make sense. When the unemployment rate was higher, the sales in stores were better and housing was better. How could this possibly be? It doesn't make sense. Now, like I said in the beginning of this report, Visa and Mastercard, they're making a deal with Russia. They don't want to lose their business. So what they're deciding to do is they're going to move their entire operation and set this up inside the country, like all their servers, the technology. This way, the control is within the country. It's not outside. Politics cannot interfere with it, because Visa and Mastercard were very nervous that they were going to be completely isolated, and Russia, China, and all the BRIC nations were going to do payment processing without them. They would lose a lot of business if they did that. So they are making deals and making sure that they're going to keep profits rolling in. Now, Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, they are signing a Eurasian Economic Union Treaty on May 29th. The leaders of Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan are set to meet on Thursday to sign the Eurasian Economic Union Treaty that will finalize the process of establishing a Eurozone-like space of ex-Soviet states. The three nations will be committed to guarantee an unfettered flow of goods, services, capital, and workforce, coordinate their key policies, including energy, industry, agricultural, and transport. The treaty, to be signed in Kazakhstan's capital, will come into force on January 1st, 2015. The summit will also consider a roadmap for Kyrgyzstan to join the Moscow-led customs union and the Eurasian Economic Zone. So they are making preparations. They are moving their agenda forward. And of course, as we know, China and Russia, they are totally joining forces to de-dollarize the entire world. According to a statement made by President Putin during his recent visit to Shanghai, Russia and China have reached an unprecedented level of cooperation that encompasses aspects ranging from energy trading to military drills. Russian President suggests that two countries are working together in order to modify the existing practices regarding currency reserve management. We must ensure and guarantee that these reserves are safe and used rationally and efficiently, using national currencies, the yuan and the ruble, in international settlements and is another topic. We have made the first modest steps in this direction, and we will continue exploring opportunities for working together in this segment. The implied message is completely clear. The U.S. dollar and the U.S. treasuries are no longer trustworthy, forcing Russia and China to look for other financial instruments. Other currencies and other ways to safeguard the value of their currencies reserves Moscow and Beijing are working together to figure out how to organize the global de-dollarization in an orderly manner that will bring maximum benefits for the newly established economic alliance. Moscow has already sold roughly one-fifth of its U.S. Treasury bills. If and when Beijing follows suit, it is game over for the U.S. dollar. This whole plan is being organized, it's getting ready, and eventually the yuan, renminbi, I said in another report from a financial advisor in China, where he was saying that yes, the yuan, renminbi will be the next reserve currency of the world. Now we have to remember the central bankers, United States government, they're not going to let this happen. They will go down kicking and screaming. They will not give up the reserve status. And this is why we see all the flashpoints all around the world. This is why they're trying to provoke all these nations at this time. This is why you see them trying to start this war. They will not stop. They will continually push on. They will not stop this. And in the meantime, while all this is going on, what are they doing here in the United States? They are trying to remove our rights. They're trying to disarm the American people all at the same time, because in their heads they understand, well, first of all, they understand that when this economy comes down, even if there's an event, which I do believe is coming, the economy will be brought to its knees. People will be very upset. People will lose their wealth. People will riot, and it will be very, very ugly. And they realize this. This is why DHS was created, to control, spy on the American people, and to organize and protect the authorities in government. This is why this was all created. The second part is they need to remove the rights of the people. They don't want them. They don't want you having rights. They don't want you having freedom of speech. They don't want you having the right where the law enforcement officers need a warrant to pat you down, to go into your home, to search for things. They don't want you having a weapon to protect you, your family, for the American people to get together and go against the government. They don't want any of this. This is why their whole agenda is to remove the Constitution at this time. Now, Senator Ted Cruz told attendees at a Family Research Council pastors' retreat that Senate Democrats want to limit free speech through amending the Constitution. Of course, you just can't amend the Constitution. You have to have a referendum in all the states. But, of course, these politicians believe if they create a law, it overrides the Constitution, but it really doesn't. But let me continue here. Senate Democrats has said they are ready to vote on the amendment, Senate Joint Resolution 19, an amendment to the Constitution of the United States relating to contributions and expenditures intended to affect elections. Senator Chuck Schumer has announced the Senate Democrats are scheduling a vote on a constitutional amendment to give Congress the authority to regulate political speech because elected officials have decided they don't like it when the citizenry has the audacity to criticize what they have done. Well, that's our right. We have the right to criticize government. That's the whole point of free speech. But they want to take it away, of course. What it says is that politicians in Washington have unlimited constitutional authority to muzzle each and every one of you if you're saying things the government finds inconvenient. And this is coming from Ted Cruz. So we can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to limit what people are saying. They don't want it on the internet. They don't want it anywhere. They only want you to hear what they want to say, and you can't criticize them. But again, this is what our founding fathers created for the people. The people have the right to criticize their government because these are the servants of the people. We do not serve them, they serve us. If we don't like what they're doing, we remove them by a crowd of people saying, you need to leave, you need to resign, and this is what you need to do. Now, of course, government doesn't like to do that. They like to keep their power. They love their power. They love their authority, and they never want to leave. So what happens is they come down on those people with force. They usually bring out the military, or in this case, DHS, because that's what it's created for, to come down on the people. And this is why our founding fathers said every person has the right to bear arms, because the people need a way to defend themselves and say, no, you're going to listen to us, you're going to resign. And we can see how this is all starting to take place now. Now, we see what's happening out in Santa Barbara. We saw what happened. There is a mass shooting, and of course, this mass shooter stabbed like 3 people, then shot 3 people, and again, this is the same typical mass shooting that we've seen over and over again. Witnesses are out there saying that there was another person in the car who was shooting. We can see this person has psychological problems. He was on drugs, trying to control it. He was being seen by 3 different doctors. And of course, all this evidence was left behind so everyone could see it. And now what do we have? Well, we have government official Senator Richard Blumenthal on Sunday. He wants to revive gun control legislation rejected by Congress back when we had the Sandy Hook incident. And of course, here we are, because you have to understand, and I've been saying this over and over, the UN Arms Treaty is pending in the Senate. The President will sign off on it if they can get it through. The Dianne Feinstein bill is pending in the Senate. The President will sign off on it if it gets through. Now, all of this is being done on purpose. He's already created all the executive orders that support these 2 bills. They are ready to go. It will disarm the American people. This is what they've been trying to do all this time. And you can see with every single mass shooting, this is their agenda. They will not stop until they can get these bills passed. And of course, during the Boston bombing, they were voting on the Dianne Feinstein bill. Of course, it was shot down. The president went in there and said, listen, don't remove it from the Senate. Just leave it there, leave it pending, because we got a special event coming up very soon that will pass it. And this is what they've been trying to do since this time. I mean, they don't work very quickly in doing these things. They let a little time go by. They ramp it up with many mini mass shootings, and then they bring on the last one that is horrific. This is ridiculous. We had enough, and now we have to pass these bills. And this is exactly what is happening. Instead of going to the heart of the problem, they're using it as we need to pass gun legislation. Of course, 3 of the murders was done by a knife, but you don't hear anything about that. That's kept very quiet. It is not the weapon, it is the person. If you look at the person, it's psychological. If you look at the medication he is on, it's a problem, but they never like to bring that up. They always go right to the weapon, just like an alcoholic who's driving a car. They don't say the car did it. No, they go back to what the cause was. It was the person who was drinking way too much, couldn't stay on the road, and they hit people. I mean, I was in an accident. A person was coming down the road. It was at night. I was going forward. He hit me head on. He backed up. My bumper was stuck in his bumper, and he drove off. They found him a little while later. He was completely drunk. He was swerving all over the road when he was heading towards me, and they found him. My bumper was still in the front of his car, and I mean, I was okay. And this has nothing to do with the car. It had to do with what he was doing. It's the same thing with what is going on now. And the only reason all this is happening and they're making a big run-up and a big play is because they want those bills passed, and this is what they're trying to do. Now, it looks like we're having problems in the European Union. A lot of votes are coming through, and people are voting the opposite way. And, of course, Draghi's out there saying people voting across Europe are clearly disengaged. No, maybe they're sick and tired of all the lies. Maybe they're sick and tired of all the promises. Maybe they're all sick and tired of all the austerity. Maybe they're just sick and tired of living the way they're living, which is every single day trying to find food, trying to make ends meet. Maybe they're just tired of all this. And we see this happening in all the different countries in Europe. And this is going to be a good thing that's happening, because it's completely having an effect on those in power. And we'll have to see how all this plays out as we go forward. Now, of course, Obama, he was out in Afghanistan, and he's out there saying that the troops are going to pretty much stay here beyond 2014. With the bilateral security agreement, assuming it is signed, we can plan for a limited security presence in Afghanistan, which means they're really not going to leave. They're going to keep soldiers there, and you'll see they'll continually ramp up more and more soldiers as time goes on. Of course, Karzai did not sign the bilateral security agreement. They're waiting for the next president to be elected and come into office, and they will try. Of course, United States central bankers will try with this person, but again, he was out there saying that he doesn't see the soldiers actually leaving Afghanistan. Of course, they're not going to leave Afghanistan because China is there. They are making deals in Afghanistan. They're helping them mine the copper, which is like the third largest copper mine. And they're not going to give up the poppy fields because those pay for all the covert operations. So we can see that this is going to continue. Now, there's an analyst out there saying that the U.S. reluctance to withdraw its forces from Afghanistan is part of a scheme to expand their control across the Middle East in an attempt to protect Israel's interest. Rodney Martin, a former U.S. congressional staffer, made the comments in response to U.S. President Barack Obama's recent remarks about Afghanistan. This is all part of a greater scheme that is well publicized called Project for New American Century to secure basing rights all through the Middle East. Project mainly takes into account to make sure that that America can bully other nations where they do not have interests, such as Iran. So this seems like it's a complete plan in what they're doing here. Now, in Ukraine, Putin is out there and he is dismissing speculation that the U.S. gas supplies to Europe will impact Russia's gas revenues, saying American firms will be better off concentrating on the Asian markets. And he went on to say, in order to set up exports of liquefied natural gas, the infrastructure has to be created on either side of the Atlantic, and everyone understands that this takes both time and money, and I don't believe the United States will be able to supply Europe with the amount of gas that they actually need. They will still need the supplies from Russia. And of course, the United States is trying to make promises to Europe, like, don't worry about it, we got your back. Even if they cut off your supplies, we'll help you out. And I don't think it's going to happen whatsoever. Now, the EU Energy Commissioner, he is out there, and he's saying Ukraine must pay their gas debt. EU Energy Commissioner Gunther Oettinger said Ukraine needs to begin repaying its $3.5 billion gas debt to Russia and proposed a fair market price. He went on to say that Ukraine needs to do it. The bill is on the table, and it has to be paid. And I went through this before. I mean, they have the money. He's saying that they should use the $3.2 billion that they received from the IMF. They should use that to pay for some of the gas. And of course, Russia is doing a prepayment plan where they need to pay for their next round of gas, or they're shutting it off, and that's coming up like June 3rd. So we're going to have to see how that plays out, because we're getting close to that date. Now, China, they're going to ditch U.S. consulting firms. Now, this is a very big hit on the U.S. business model here, because state-owned Chinese companies will cease to work with U.S. consulting companies like McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group over fears they are spying on behalf of the U.S. government. U.S. consulting companies McKinsey, BCG, Bain & Company, and Strategy, formerly Booz & Company, will all be snubbed by state-owned Chinese companies. China has already banned Microsoft's Windows 8 operating system from the government computers. So right now, what is happening, since the United States government central bankers brought up these 5 individuals for hacking and cyber espionage, China is fighting back, saying we're not doing business with American companies at this time, and these companies are going to lose a lot of business. And what happens then? They lose the business, they don't have the profits, they lay off more people. So this is not going to benefit the American people whatsoever. But you have to remember, this is not what they want. They want a war started. They want an event, and if they can't get this event, they will create it, because they already know the economy is completely falling apart. They already know that there is no hope. They already know that the countries are in so much debt, there is no way out. This is why they created these bail-in documents, because they realize to keep these banks afloat, they're going to have to go inward to take all that cash that is inside them. Of course, it's only electronic numbers, but they're going to have to go inside the banks to get the money. They're going to have to rob it from the people. They're going to have to take it by force. And this is why the European Union, Canada, Australia, Switzerland, UK, United States, all have these bail-in documents. It was done on purpose. Now, of course, as we know, elections are going on in Ukraine, and we know that the people that are running for these elections are picked by the puppet regime, by the United States central bankers, and they're going to be part of the puppet regime. Nothing's going to really change, and you can tell that nothing's going to change because they always normally leave those people in power. Just like when a new president comes into power in the United States, they don't make changes really to the Federal Reserve. They usually keep those people in power because, and other positions. They only do a surface change, but they keep the bankers pretty much where they are. And this is how you know that it's all part of the same system. But the EU is ready to sign free trade zone agreement with Ukraine. The European Union is ready to sign a free trade zone agreement with Ukraine. It's ready to provide Ukraine with foreign, political, and financial assistance. So they're going to join NATO, and they're going to join the EU system. And of course, they want a visa-free travel regime for Ukrainian citizens, and that may be put into place before the end of this year. And this was their plan from the beginning, but they thought they were going to have the entire country. They thought they were going to have the southeast, the Crimea, and the west part of Ukraine. But it seems like at this time they're only ending up with the west side of Ukraine at this time. So what's happening here is Poroshenko seems like he is the victor of these elections, and it looks like the turnout was pretty low. It wasn't that great. And there was a lot of violations of voting, and also we know Cyber Bakut also went in and, I guess, placed a virus into the electronic voting system, so they had to use paper ballots. And it seems like there were a couple violations going on with the elections. And I'm going to tell you right now, it was completely fixed. They wanted who they wanted in there. They got that person in there, and it was all staged to make it look like it was democratic and the people had a free election system, which it really didn't. And what we're seeing right now, Moscow is saying that, all right, we'll treat the results of the presidential election in Ukraine with respect. We will show a respectful attitude towards the will of the Ukrainian people. And, of course, they want them to respect Russia's viewpoint and the people of Ukraine. And we're going to have to see how that goes, because I just don't see it going anywhere except intensified anti-terrorism forces in the southeast section of Ukraine. Now, the people in Lugansk who had a referendum, they are saying that they imposed a ban on the sale of corporate rights at this time. And this is coming from the Lugansk People's Republic. They've signed a decree banning the sale of corporate rights, production facilities, companies, equipment, buildings, and other assets that could have negative economic impact on the people of Lugansk. And they revealed this today, that you cannot sell any of the stuff in the region or take control of any of the businesses in that region at this time. Now, Poroshenko is saying that he's going to keep Yatsenyuk in power. He's going to keep him as the prime minister at this time. And as you can see, Yatsenyuk, or Yats, they like to call him, he was placed in there way before the coup. They knew exactly he is a banker, and of course he's going to be kept in place. Of course he is, because it's part of the puppet regime. Nothing will change. It's an illusion to make everyone believe that this was democratic, it was free, and look, they have an elected government, but they're keeping the key players all in power. And we have to remember, the anti-terrorism forces are still moving in the Donetsk, the Lugansk area. They haven't stopped. They're still firing on the people. Of course, those regions are telling Ukrainian officials, we want you to remove yourself. We are no longer part of Ukraine. And that part has not stopped. And of course, the newly elected president is saying that, he's going to stop the wars, and it's always lip service. Yes, we're going to, just like the United States, the presidents, we're going to remove our troops from this region, that region, and it never really happens. It's all lip service. We have to actually look at their actions. So he's talking right now. It sounds really great, but they're continuing with the anti-terrorism intensified force on the people in the southeast regions. Now, we understand in Turkey, which is a NATO-backed country, and there are riots in there. They're rioting against Erdogan, and the United States is supplying the military police in Turkey with tear gas and other military assets to fight against the riots and the people rising up, because they don't want to lose that puppet regime in Turkey at this time. They want to keep that government in power, because you can see around the world, in Thailand, you can see it happening in the Middle East, where things are getting out of control. They don't want to lose their puppet regime government. They need these people in place to keep the illusion, to keep everything propped up, to keep control. But slowly but surely, they are losing control in all aspects, and they realize this. And when I say their backs are against the wall, yes, they have all the money. Yes, they have all the power, but they are slowly losing it, and they realize this. They realize the economies are coming down. And when I say their backs against the wall, is that the people of these countries are rising up. When these people rise up and they take back their countries, they're no longer going to have a private Western central bank. They're no longer going to sell their natural resources using the US dollar. They will use other currencies. They will use gold or anything else to sell this their natural resources. And the private Western central bankers do not want this to happen, especially because what happens is they then don't need to keep the US dollar in reserves, and that comes flooding back to the United States. It devalues the dollar, and we see hyperinflation here. Before this happens, the United States central bankers will start an event, and they've already put their plan in motion with Syria, and they are not stopping right now. And again, I do not believe in coincidences. Jordan is expelling the Syrian ambassador amid tensions. And we understand in Jordan right now what's happening. We understand they're having drills at the same time the elections are going on. We understand that weapons are being filtered down into Jordan, that they're training thousands upon thousands of paid mercenaries, and they are getting prepared. And right now, this says Jordan has ordered Syria's ambassador to leave the country in 24 hours, accusing him of making offensive statements about the U.S. allied kingdom. The government considers the Syrian ambassador to Jordan persona non grata and has demanded him to leave the country within 24 hours. The ministry claimed that the decision came after Ambassador Bahajit Suleiman's repeated insults to the country and its leaderships. Jordanian officials say the ambassador had warned the U.S. allied kingdom that Syrian missiles could be used against Patriot batteries, which are expected to be deployed in Jordan soon. Now, why are they deploying Patriot batteries there? Could it be that there's going to be some type of an event? They already have the soldiers there. They already have the military assets there. And by the way, the Patriot batteries were always there from the last time they brought down the military assets back in August of 2013. So all of this is in place for a very specific reason. Now, Syria said, well, if you're going to expel our ambassador, we're expelling your ambassador. Syria is set to expel Jordan's ambassador. It's a tit for tat, of course, saying that he has 24 hours to leave the kingdom. Now, all this is being put into place. All what we're seeing right now is a build-up to this event that is going to occur. Now, the Washington Post is out there, and they are seeking U.S. patrolled safe zones in Syria. The Washington Post neocon editors have made another strident appeal for President Barack Obama to abandon his passivity, to do something to help the rebels in Syria, complaining that they continue to receive far too little help from the United States. Well, it's all covert right now. They don't want everyone to realize what's exactly going on here. Yes, behind closed doors, Congress voted to send weapons, and then we come to find out they're receiving anti-tank and anti-missile, anti-aircraft weapons. We come to find out that they're training paid mercenaries in secret bases in Jordan. We come to find out that there's an exercise going on, which is really not an exercise, it's in preparation for this event. And the Post ups the ante by boldly asserting that Syrian dictator Assad continues to launch chemical attacks in rebel-controlled neighborhoods. Yes, the corporate media is keeping this up to make everyone believe that he still has chemical weapons, that he's still using them, and he never used them before, because it came out that the paid mercenaries actually were using it. Post editors on Saturday called on the Obama administration to undertake a responsibility to protect mission by violating the sovereignty of Syria, by breaking international law through military action inside Syria's borders to establish a safe zone for the rebels. Now, if this actually does occur, this will kick off World War III, because we have to understand that Russia has Syria's back. China and Russia and Iran are making a deal with each other, a security deal. So we can see what is going on at this time. And right now, the Al-Qaeda rebel division in Syria that are the paid mercenaries, they have claimed the launch of weapons production and has attacked Syrian army positions in Homs. So they're producing their own weapons, they're saying, at this time. So if we take this all into account, we can see that this is all playing up to the next event, because they need this event, because they realize everything is really starting to fall apart now. Their illusion is falling apart, and there's no other way around this at this time. Ukraine at this time is lost. Thailand is lost. They're having problems in Libya. They're down in Central Africa, because that's where China is. Most of the states, the countries in Africa, are reducing their dollar reserves and increasing the yuan renminbi reserves. There's a clearinghouse in Kenya. China has made deals all around the world. The dollar is losing value. The people around the world, I should say the central banks, the countries, are losing faith in the dollar at this time. And it's continually ongoing, non-stop. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.